Imagine this: 11 years of marriage, a shared child, dreams built together. Then, out of nowhere, everything shatters. The man at the center of this story isn't a superhero. He's just a regular guy. He worked hard, loved his family with everything he had, and strived every day to be the best husband and father he could be. But while he thought he was building a solid life, cracks were quietly forming behind the scenes. Cryptic messages, odd patterns he brushed off, and one unexpected comment from his young son that flipped his world upside down. What's it like to stumble upon a heartbreaking truth when you aren't even searching for it? And when your whole foundation begins to collapse, how do you find your footing again? Maybe, just maybe, a new path is already taking shape. Curious to hear how it all unfolded? Hey friend, glad you stumbled across my channel. If this is your first time here, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps out more than you might think. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from, your city and country. Now, let's dive into the story. My wife and I are both 35, and we've been married for just over a decade. 11 years, to be precise. We live in a once rural town that's quickly being swallowed up by city expansion. It used to be all farmland. Now, it's transforming into a suburb. Back when we graduated high school, our class barely hit 200 students. These days, that number is pushing 500. I was raised on a farm by my father after my mother left when I was still a little boy. She disappeared from our lives and never returned. From a young age, I helped my dad with farm chores until he eventually leased the land and took a factory job. The lease money gave him the chance to invest in more property during the recession. One of those properties included a house, which he allowed me to renovate as a future home for my own family. Technically, the land still belongs to a family trust, but my wife and I cover all the expenses and maintenance ourselves. My wife came from a modest, working-class background, but her family was close-knit and incredibly kind. They welcomed me with open arms right from the beginning. They moved to our town when we were both in junior high. We started dating in high school and stayed together ever since. After I landed a steady job, we got married. Before that, I took on any work I could find, junk hauling, house painting, whatever paid the bills. Now we have an 8-year-old son. My wife stays home to care for him, while I work as a route driver for a major snack company. Over the years, I've expanded my delivery territory to include nearly every grocery store, convenience shop, and gas station in the area. Because our town still feels pretty rural, my route covers a wide range. We had a bigger plan in the works. Once our workload grew enough, my wife was going to manage a second truck. A new supercenter grocery store was set to open the following year, and if I could secure full control of my route, it would open up huge opportunities for us. We've been together since right after high school, and while we had our share of joyful moments, the journey hasn't always been smooth. My long hours were often a strain. I always try to be present, but more often than not, work pulled me away. Still, we made time for laughter and shared some truly good memories. Our son means the world to both of us. He's energetic, passionate, and absolutely loves sports. He played basketball in winter, baseball in spring, and recently started getting into flag football. This past spring, things between my wife and me started to feel strained. The connection was slipping. So we sat down and had a raw, honest conversation. We both agreed we wanted to fix things. From late April into mid-June, it felt like we had rediscovered each other. Our relationship reignited. We were closer than we'd been in a long time. I had to juggle more than ever, balancing work and our revived romance. But I didn't mind. Meanwhile, our son was fully immersed in baseball season. I didn't miss a single game, even if I couldn't always make it to practices. A lot of other dads volunteered to coach, but that just wasn't possible with my schedule. My wife filled in when needed. The team's coach, Benjamin, used to be married to Miranda, a close friend of mine from high school. Miranda had been the top student in our class, always bright and driven. After college, she married Benjamin, and they had a son around the same age as ours. But their relationship didn't last. They separated 3 years ago. Miranda moved back to town and leaned on her parents for help with her son. Benjamin returned about a year later. probably to be near his kid, maybe even to try and mend things with Miranda. By June, my wife and I were slipping back into old habits again. In July, we had another heart-to-heart and doubled down on our commitment to each other. We even took a trip together, hoping it would reignite our connection. For a brief time, it helped, but by mid-August, that spark had dimmed again. Then came September, and with it, our son's new passion, flag football. He dove into it head first. One evening, I dropped by one of my son's practices and wasn't expecting what I saw. My wife standing next to Benjamin, clipboard in hand, actively running drills. Several other dads were helping too, but she stood out. Later that night, I brought it up. Before she had a chance to explain, our son jumped in and proudly said, "Mom's not just helping. She's one of the coaches." Apparently, when she signed him up for flag football, she also volunteered to coach, and the role quickly took over much of her schedule. I started noticing how glued she was to her phone, mostly texting, occasionally taking calls, but always absorbed in the screen. Almost every afternoon after school, she and our son would head to Benjamin's house. He was training both boys together. And to be fair, the extra effort showed. Our son and Benjamin's kid were becoming standout players on the team. The first official game arrived. I just clocked out for my route that morning and got to the field just in time to watch the action. My eyes landed on my wife standing side by side with Benjamin, giving instructions to the team like a seasoned coach. As I took my seat in the stands, someone pulled up a chair next to me. It was Miranda. We sat in silence for the first half, just watching. But at halftime, she turned to me with a serious look and asked, "How are things going with your wife?" I replied that everything was fine, but she didn't seem convinced. After a pause, she leaned closer and said there was something I needed to know, something her son had told her. A few days earlier, rain had forced practice to be canceled. The boys stayed indoors at Benjamin's house, passing the time with video games. At some point, Miranda's son went to the kitchen to grab a drink, and that's when he saw it. Benjamin and my wife kissing. Shocked, he quietly returned to the living room and later told Miranda what he had witnessed. That night, everything shifted inside me. The following Monday, I woke up at 3:30 a.m., an hour earlier than usual. While she was still asleep, I reached for her phone. After multiple failed attempts, I finally figured out the passcode. What I found hit me like a freight train. Her inbox was filled with messages, some incredibly explicit. Others came with revealing photos she had sent. I didn't hesitate. I took screenshots of every single one. From that moment, everything about our life together felt fake. I usually stayed in town once a week to handle errands or attend appointments. Sometimes I'd come home for lunch unexpectedly, especially when things between us seemed solid. A few of those surprise visits ended with me finding the house empty. I'd call her, no answer. More than once, I drove past Benjamin's house and saw her car in the driveway. One time, I spotted it there just as I was wrapping up work for the day. That night, I confronted her. She claimed she'd been out shopping, apologized for missing me, and tried to wave it off. I told her I'd just dropped by on a whim, so there was no reason for concern. But the next week, I changed my approach. I let her know in advance that I'd be coming home for lunch. Instead, I parked my truck a few blocks away from Benjamin's house and waited. A few minutes passed before she came out, jumped into her car, and sped off toward our place. I followed at a normal pace, keeping my distance. By the time I stepped through the front door, she was already in the kitchen, acting completely casual as she made a sandwich. We chatted over lunch like nothing had happened. That Saturday, after our son's game, I brought him home to get changed before taking him over to my dad's place. He had the option to fish or swim, whatever he felt like. When I returned home, she was gone. I passed by Benjamin's again. Sure enough, her car was out front. I called her. This time, she picked up, but her tone was sharp, annoyed. I asked her directly, "What are you doing there?" Silence. I calmly told her to get dressed and come home. When she walked in, I was already seated at the table, waiting. She burst through the door angry, accusing me of being paranoid. I stayed calm and asked her to sit. She refused, her voice getting louder, her words more defensive. I stood my ground. "Lower your voice," I said. "Sit down. There's something you need to see." She demanded to know what was in the folder I held, but I repeated myself. She had to sit first. Finally, she did. I laid out the evidence one piece at a time. Text messages, photos, the full truth. She exploded at first, furious that I had gone through her phone. But when her eyes landed on the explicit photos, her voice vanished. That was the end for me. I told her she had until the next Sunday to gather her things. On Monday, I'd be meeting with an attorney. She could pack her personal items. Everything else could be sorted later. She broke down, tearfully apologizing again and again. I asked her something I'd once read on an advice forum, a question that had haunted me since. What exactly did you think was going to happen? She didn't have an answer, and by then, there was nothing left to say. Since then, I've been staying at my dad's place. That Sunday, I brought our son back to the house so he could catch his school bus the next morning. I sat him down and gently explained that his mom and I wouldn't be living together anymore, but that he would still stay in his home. When I returned that evening, she was gone. Everything she owned had been taken. We agreed she would pick our son up from school each day. She could either stay with him at the house until I got home or take him to her parents. Regardless of what happened between us, she was still his mother, and we were going to co-parent. The divorce process is officially underway. She'll be served next week, though I've made sure it won't be done in a public setting. This isn't about revenge. It's about letting go and moving forward.